What began as a routine federal inquiry has now exposed a network far larger and far more dangerous now than anyone expected.
4:47 a.m. South Minneapolis, Minnesota. Temperature 18 degrees below zero. Three black Chevy Suburbans rolled through empty streets, headlights cutting through frozen darkness. Inside, 22 federal agents prepared to breach what government records called a legitimate child care facility. The Bright Learning Center, registered, licensed, trusted. But the children were ghosts. This video reaches everyone who needs to know the truth. This investigation didn't start with a tip, it started with an algorithm. Minnesota's Department of Human Services uses automated fraud detection software. In February 2019, the system flagged an anomaly. One daycare facility was claiming meal reimbursements for 470 children daily. The national average, 85 children per facility. Data analysts dug deeper. The Bright Learning Center had been operating for 47 months. In that time, it received $3 million in federal child nutrition subsidies. Zero complaints, zero violations. Zero inspections that revealed anything unusual. But the numbers told a different story. The facility's water usage was 340 gallons per month. A legitimate daycare serving 470 children uses approximately 18,000 gallons monthly for bathrooms, kitchens, and cleaning. The electricity consumption, 890 kilowatt hours. Barely enough to power lights in an empty building. Someone was collecting millions for children who weren't there. If you want to see how deep this goes, comment exposed below. FBI Special Agent Marcus Thornton took the case in March 2019. His team began surveillance immediately. For 6 weeks, they watched the building. Cameras positioned across the street captured every arrival, every departure, every movement. What they documented was theater. Every morning at 7:45, a white Honda Odyssey arrived. A woman in her 30s carried an empty infant car seat into the building. She stayed exactly 90 seconds. Then she left, car seat still empty. At 8:30, a silver Toyota Camry repeated the performance. Different driver, same routine, empty car seat in, empty car seat out. This happened 14 times every morning. 14 drivers, 14 empty car seats, 0 children. But through the windows, agents could hear something. Children's voices, laughter playing the unmistakable soundtrack of a busy daycare. Agent Thornton ordered acoustic analysis. The truth was disturbing. The audio was a loop. High-fidelity speakers hidden in ceiling vents played the same 47-minute recording on repeat 4 hours daily. The sound of children who didn't exist, creating the illusion of life inside an empty building. This wasn't amateur fraud. This was engineered deception. Type yes if you're ready for what happened next. Federal investigators expanded the probe. Financial records revealed a network far larger than one facility. The Bright Learning Center was one of 17 daycares operated by the same ownership group, all registered under different names, all claiming to serve between 200 and 500 children daily. Total government payments to these facilities, $247 million over 4 years. Bank records showed a disturbing pattern. Within 72 hours of receiving government deposits, the money moved, first to business accounts in Minnesota, then to shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, finally to offshore accounts in Dubai, Estonia, and the Cayman Islands. The money disappeared faster than investigators could track it, but forensic accountants found something else. Buried in transaction records were payments that had nothing to do with child care. $340,000 to a chemical supply company in Guangzhou, China. $180,000 to a shipping broker in Long Beach, California. $520,000 to a logistics firm with no website, no employees, and an address that traced to a UPS store in Las Vegas. These weren't daycare expenses. They were supply chain payments for something else entirely. The FBI opened a parallel drug trafficking investigation. If this shocks you, hit like now. Surveillance teams identified the network's leader. Abdi Hassan Jamal, 38 years old. On paper, he was a community leader, owner of multiple child care facilities, advocate for immigrant families, respected philanthropist, but bank records told a different story. Jamal owned 6 properties in Minnesota. His tax returns showed an annual income of $180,000, yet his personal bank accounts had processed $34 million in deposits over 3 years. Agents tracked his movements. Every Tuesday at 11:00 p.m., he drove to an industrial area near the Mississippi River. He parked outside an abandoned paper mill, officially condemned since 2017. He stayed inside for 90 minutes, then he left. Thermal imaging revealed something impossible. The building's internal temperature was 78 degrees. Sections of the roof showed heat signatures consistent with industrial equipment running continuously. The condemned mill wasn't abandoned. It was operational. On March 12, 2020, federal prosecutors secured warrants for simultaneous raids, the daycare facilities, Jamal's properties, and the paper mill. The operation was scheduled for 5:00 a.m. March 14th, but Jamal had insurance. Share this so more people understand what's really happening. Federal agents didn't know that Jamal's network had embedded a detection system. Motion sensors at 3 daycare locations were linked to encrypted phones carried by network members. The moment agents approached the first facility, the system triggered. Within 4 minutes, $7 million began moving through pre-programmed transfer routes. Dubai. Estonia cryptocurrency exchanges. The money moved faster than agents could react, but the FBI had anticipated this. They'd already contacted international banking partners. Freeze orders were in place across 14 countries. $7 million entered the system. $340,000 escaped. The rest was locked down. At 5:14 a.m. agents breached the Bright Learning Center. The main room was massive, 6,000 square feet of empty space. Rows of cribs lined the walls, 120 in total, each one covered in dust, price tags still attached to furniture that had never been assembled. A kitchen designed to serve hundreds sat unused. Industrial refrigerators were empty except for a single carton of expired milk, but the attendance sheets told a different story, posted on the wall documenting 450 children present that morning. Names, ages, arrival times, all meticulously recorded. Every single child was fake. In the office, investigators found file cabinets containing profiles for 2,847 children. Each profile included a birth certificate, immunization records, and parent contact information. Forensic analysis revealed the truth. The identities were stolen. Birth certificates belonged to children living in California, Texas, and Arizona. Some of the children were real. Some were completely fabricated. All had been used to file fraudulent subsidy claims totaling tens of millions of dollars. This wasn't a crime. This was a system built to steal from programs designed to feed hungry children. Comment your reaction if this outrages you. While teams processed the daycare, Agent Thornton's tactical unit moved on the paper mill. They approached at 5:40 a.m. The building was dark, silent, no visible movement. Thermal scans told a different story. 43 heat signatures inside, human-sized, some moving, some stationary. The breach happened at 5:52 a.m. A battering ram struck the reinforced steel door. It buckled but held. Second strike. The door collapsed inward. Agents entered with weapons drawn. The smell hit them immediately. Chemical, acrid, industrial solvents mixed with something sweet and synthetic. The first floor was a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility spanning 3 acres. Pill presses, mixing equipment, industrial scales, quality control stations, packaging machines stamped with Chinese characters. This wasn't a crude street lab, this was pharmaceutical-grade production. Agents found 840 kilograms of fentanyl powder, enough to produce 420 million lethal doses. The pills were designed to look identical to prescription oxycodone. Blue. Round, stamped with M30 markings, indistinguishable from legitimate medication unless chemically tested. These pills had been linked to 73 overdose deaths across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa in the previous 8 months, and they were being manufactured inside a building that no one was watching. If you believe justice matters, hit like now. The most disturbing discovery came on the second floor. Agents found 41 workers living in cramped quarters, mattresses on concrete floors, minimal food, no windows, the air thick with chemical residue. These weren't employees, they were trafficking victims. Interviews revealed a horrifying pattern. The workers had been recruited overseas with promises of construction jobs in America. They paid smugglers $15,000 each for passage. When they arrived in Minnesota, their passports were taken. They were driven to the mill. And they were told they would work until their debt was paid. None had been paid a single dollar. They worked 12-hour shifts handling toxic chemicals without protective equipment. Several showed signs of chemical burns and respiratory damage. They weren't allowed to leave. Guards monitored them constantly. Threats were explicit. Cooperate or your family back home will suffer. This wasn't employment. This was modern slavery. Medical teams transported all 41 workers to hospitals for treatment and evaluation. Federal prosecutors immediately filed trafficking charges, but Jamal wasn't at the mill. Type justice if you want to see what happened to him. GPS tracking showed Jamal's Range Rover moving north on Interstate 94 at 6:08 a.m. speed, 102 miles per hour. He was running for the Canadian border. Minnesota State Patrol initiated pursuit. FBI coordinated with Canadian border authorities. Within 18 minutes, every crossing point within 200 miles was locked down. At 6:34 a.m., Jamal's vehicle stopped 14 miles from the border. Location, a rural rest area surrounded by forest. Tactical teams arrived within 8 minutes. They found Jamal sitting in the driver's seat. Engine off, hands on the steering wheel, no resistance. On the passenger seat, 3 encrypted phones, 2 laptops, and a briefcase containing $340,000 in cash. He didn't speak. He didn't fight. He simply stared ahead as agents placed him in custody. His expression, according to arresting officers, showed no fear, only resignation. The look of someone who had always known this moment would come. Inside his phones, forensic teams found the network's architecture. Encrypted communications with 23 individuals across 7 states. Financial records documenting every fraudulent payment, supplier contacts in China and Mexico, distribution networks reaching 14 cities, and something else. References to 3 additional nonprofit organizations operating the same model. The investigation wasn't over, it was expanding. Share this video so more communities understand the threat. Federal prosecutors filed charges on March 16, 2020. Abdi Hassan Jamal faced 47 counts: wire fraud, money laundering, drug trafficking. Operating a continuing criminal enterprise, human trafficking, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. If convicted on all counts, he faced life imprisonment without parole. But Jamal was only the beginning. The evidence seized from his phones led to 34 additional arrests across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Ohio. The network included daycare operators, nonprofit directors, accountants, and 2 immigration attorneys who facilitated document fraud. Total stolen funds, $247 million from federal child nutrition programs. The number was staggering. It represented one of the largest frauds ever perpetrated against social service programs in American history. 6,000 families lost child care subsidies. Parents were forced to quit jobs. Children lost access to meals they depended on. Legitimate daycares closed, unable to compete with a fraudulent network that operated without financial constraints. And the pills manufactured in that mill continued appearing on streets, in schools, in communities where families believed their children were safe. Emergency rooms across 3 states treated patients who thought they were taking legitimate prescription medication. Some survived, many did not. The damage reached into every corner of the region. If you want updates on this case, hit subscribe now. During the investigation, agents discovered something that deepened the betrayal. Judge Layla Mahed, a sitting family court judge in Hennepin County, had accepted $180,000 in payments from Jamal's network over 2 years. In exchange, she expedited business licenses for fraudulent daycares. She dismissed complaints filed by legitimate operators. She ensured inspections never revealed violations. Her bank records showed deposits labeled as consulting fees, payments arriving 48 hours after she ruled in favor of network-connected cases. This wasn't coincidence. This was corruption purchased with stolen money intended to feed children. Federal prosecutors charged Mahed with bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. She resigned from the bench on March 18, 2020. Her trial is scheduled for September 2026. The line between law and crime had been erased. When judges betray their oath, trust inside institutions collapses. Communities lose faith in systems designed to protect them. The damage spreads like poison through water. Invisible, persistent, deadly, comment corruption if this makes you angry. As investigators continued analyzing seized records, a troubling pattern emerged. The daycare fraud was a proof of concept, a test to see if the system could be exploited without detection, and it worked for 4 years. Financial records revealed connections to similar operations in Arizona, Texas, and Ohio. Each one used the same model. Register nonprofits claiming to serve vulnerable populations, collect government funds, funnel money into criminal enterprises. Shell companies shared the same attorneys. Bank accounts followed identical transfer patterns. Encrypted communications used the same code phrases. This wasn't isolated fraud. This was a blueprint, and it had been replicated across multiple states, stealing hundreds of millions while hiding behind the language of community service and social good. Federal task forces are now investigating 11 additional nonprofit organizations across the country. Each one operates daycares, feeding programs, or refugee assistance services. Each one shows the same financial anomalies that flagged the Bright Learning Center. The question isn't whether more networks exist. The question is how many are still operating, still stealing, still poisoning communities while wearing the mask of legitimacy. If you believe this needs to be exposed, share this video now. For the families affected, the consequences are permanent. Maria Gonzalez worked 2 jobs to afford child care for her 3-year-old daughter. When her subsidy was revoked due to program cuts following the fraud, she lost her second job. She couldn't afford rent. Her family was evicted. James Patterson believed he was taking prescription medication for back pain. The blue pills he purchased from a trusted source were counterfeit fentanyl manufactured in Jamal's mill. He survived the overdose but suffered permanent neurological damage. Keisha Williams operated a legitimate daycare for 17 years. After the fraud was exposed, her funding was cut by 60%. She couldn't meet payroll. She closed her doors in July 2020. 140 children lost the only stable care environment they had known. These aren't statistics. They're people, families, communities torn apart by betrayal disguised as charity. The stolen money was meant to help the most vulnerable. Instead, it funded an empire built on exploitation and death. Type accountability if you believe justice must be served. The trial began in federal court on January 14, 2026. Prosecutors presented 847 pieces of evidence: financial records, surveillance footage, victim testimony, intercepted communications. Jamal's defense argued he was a legitimate businessman exploited by partners he didn't fully understand. His attorneys claimed he believed the daycares were operating legally, but the evidence was overwhelming. Email records showed Jamal personally ordering pill press equipment from China. Bank statements documented his direct control over offshore accounts. Recorded phone calls captured him discussing drug distribution routes and threatening workers who tried to leave. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all 47 counts. At sentencing, Judge Raymond Kellerman called the operation one of the most cynical betrayals of public trust I have encountered in 30 years on the bench. Jamal was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. He showed no emotion as the sentence was read. His co-defendants received sentences ranging from 8 to 35 years. $118 million in seized assets will be returned to defrauded programs. The remaining $129 million was never recovered. But the case didn't end with Jamal's conviction. Share this so the investigation continues getting attention. In the end, this video reveals something uncomfortable about the systems we trust. Criminal networks don't announce themselves. They don't operate in shadows alone. They hide inside familiar institutions, moving through systems designed to help people, exploiting the assumption of good faith. The daycare looked legitimate. The paperwork was filed correctly, the payments processed automatically, and for 4 years no one questioned whether the children actually existed, because we believe that places meant to care for children are safe, that nonprofits serving vulnerable populations are trustworthy, that judges uphold the law rather than sell it. This operation succeeded not through violence but through patience, through understanding that systems built on trust can be weaponized by those willing to betray that trust completely, and it's still happening. Federal investigations across 11 states are uncovering similar networks, more fake nonprofits, more stolen funds. More communities poisoned while criminals hide behind the language of service and compassion. The lesson isn't paranoia, it's vigilance. It's understanding that the greatest damage is sometimes done by those who look most trustworthy. That danger can wear a respectable face, operate legitimate-looking businesses, and stand in spaces we believe are safe. If you believe stories like this need to be told, hit like now. For investigators, the work continues. Financial trails are being traced across continents. New suspects are being identified. Networks are being dismantled one operation at a time, but every day the work continues, more families lose assistance they need. More victims are trafficked into invisible slavery. More counterfeit pills reach communities unprepared for the devastation they bring. This isn't a video with a clean ending. It's a warning. A reminder that vigilance isn't suspicion. It's protection, that asking questions isn't cynicism. It's responsibility. Because somewhere right now, another network is filing paperwork for a nonprofit that will never serve the people it claims to help. Another fake daycare is collecting payments for children who don't exist. Another mill is producing pills that will kill people who believe they're taking medicine. The question isn't whether it's happening. The question is whether we'll recognize it before it's too late. Comment awareness if you understand why this matters. Subscribe so you don't miss updates on these investigations. Share this video before the algorithm buries it. And remember, the fight for accountability never ends. It requires all of us to stay informed, stay vigilant, and demand transparency from every institution that claims to serve the public good, because trust is earned, and betrayal has consequences. This is only the beginning.